Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this Capital Budget Subcommittee Decisions meeting to order. Thank you all for your patience. I know we were supposed to start much earlier, but we want to thank our partners at the Department of Legislative Services for their dogged work in making sure that we were fully prepared, crunching all the numbers, and dealing with all kinds of obstacles. We thank you all so very much, and I'll hand it over to you all, to our, absolutely, if you all want to show your appreciation. And also thank you to everyone who's in the audience here for this hearing. I'll hand it over to our subcommittee coordinator.
Good afternoon. My name is Madeline Miller. Today we'll be walking through several documents. First, we'll have the DLS budget analysts walk through the white decision document packet as well as the goldenrod additional pages. And beginning on page 1, our first analyst, Scott Benson.
For the judiciary on page 1 of the decision document.
Yep, I got you. Sir, yeah, if you could move the mic closer to your mouth. No, you got to move it. Move it up. Yeah, just move the actual mic and bring it all the way up to you. You can slide it.
Beginning on page 1 of the decision document, for the judiciary, DLS recommended approving all general obligation bond authorizations, pre-authorizations, and amendments to prior authorizations for the judiciary. The judiciary didn't respond, and the first house adopted. Concur.
Second.
On page 2, for the Department of Disabilities, DLS recommended approving the GO bond authorization for the Access Maryland program. The agency concurred and the first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
On page 3 for Historic St. Mary's City Commission, item 1 is narrative requesting a report on the site improvements programs expenditures. The agency concurred and the first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
Then on page 4, item 2 is an additional Senate action that extends the termination date for a prior authorization for the Maryland Heritage Interpretive Center. The first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
The Interagency Commission on School Construction, it starts on page 5. Item 1 is DLS's recommended action to approve all GO bond authorizations for the IAC. The agency concurred and the first house rejected and adopted several additional items. I can go into those now. So item 2 is an additional Senate action that would give the Senate and the House authority to each direct half of the $70 million for the COP Priority Fund. The Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
There's another additional Senate action on page 6. Item 3 would modify the method for allocating the supplemental capital grant program funds. The Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
There's an additional page for your consideration on pages 1 and 2 of the yellow packet. This page would do 3 things. First, it would increase the authorization for the DeGrange Non-Public Aging Schools Program from $3.5 million to $5 million. 2, it would specify that residential schools get funding priority. And 3, it would set aside $1 million of the total amount for the Woodburn School.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the color pages, the additional pages.
Second.
Back in the white packet on page 8 in the Department of Planning, DLS recommended approving all the bond authorizations and amendments, and the Senate made no changes to the 2027 allowance, but did add a pre-authorization in 2028. You'll see this in item number 2 on pages 8 and 9.
Mr. Chair, I move to concur.
Second.
On page 10 of the white packet is the military department. The first recommendation deauthorizes funds for the new Joint Force headquarters, as the project is not programmed to receive further design funds until fiscal 2030. The agency concurred and the first house adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move to concur.
Second.
There is an additional first house action on page 11. This extends the termination date for GEO bond funds for the combined support maintenance shop project. The first house adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move to concur.
Second.
Turning to page 12 is the Department of Information Technology. DLS recommendation was to approve all GO bond authorizations. The agency concurred and the first House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur.
Second.
Moving on to the Department of General Services, on page 13, the first recommended action was to deauthorize funds for the Revolutionary War Memorial for Black Soldiers project. Because the additional funding was inadvertently authorized for this project, the agency concurred and the first House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur.
Second.
The second recommendation was to reduce facilities renewal fund for 2 projects as they may be eligible to be funded with additional C funding. The agency concurred in part, saying that only $6.5 million is eligible for C funding. The first House rejected.
Mr. Chair, move to concur.
Second.
Turning to page 14 is an additional first House action which adds funds for the Revenue Administration Center. The first House adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to modify Senate action, increase the funding for this project by $175,000.
Second.
All right, moving to page 15, the Department of Natural Resources. There you go. Moving to the Department of Natural Resources, on page 15, the
That's why
Department of
you're my
Legislative
favorite analyst.
Recommended approving all authorizations, pre-authorizations, and deauthorizations. The agency concurred, and the first House rejected that action due to actions they took, and the House has actually also taken in the budget and the Budget Reconciliation Financing Act. This is the actions that would actually return the program open space transfer tax funding to the programs as initially kind of were provided for in statute, and not needing the general obligation bond funding to backfill. So first action, you could reject or concur with the Senate to reject this first action.
Mr. Chairman, for the first item on Department of Natural Resources, move to concur.
Second.
All right, and for actions 2 through 4 on page 16, to conform with the actions, you would want to concur with the Senate for all of those pieces, 2, 3, and 4.
Mr. Chairman, for items 2, 3, and 4, move to concur.
On page 17 is a similar action related to the Waterway Improvement Fund. So there are $13,868,000 in general obligation bond funding was provided for this purpose. However, there's been a change in terms of the overall amount in the budget that's going to be transferred to the general fund. Therefore, you would do a change of a reduction of $6,056,844 to concur with the Senate on that piece.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
Moving now to page 18, the Department of Legislative Services recommended concurring with the governor's authorization for the Maryland Agricultural Cost Share Program and the proposed deauthorization for the Salisbury Animal Health Laboratory Replacement Project. The agency concurred. The first House rejected this in favor of adding a technical amendment for the Salisbury Animal Health Deauthorization Project that would extend funding to fiscal 2028. So you'd concur on 1 and then concur on 2 as well.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
On page 20 in the Maryland Department of Health, DLS recommended approving all general bond authorizations and pre-authorizations. The agency concurred. The first House adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
On page 21 is the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. Item 1 is a narrative requesting a report on the reevaluation of the Baltimore Therapeutic Treatment Center. The agency concurred and the first House adopted. However, there is a modification to the language on page 3 of the Goldenrod packet. This would add language asking the department to seek public comment on the project.
Mr. Chairman, move to modify this narrative with additional page packet.
Second.
On page 22 of the white packet for the Maryland State Library Agency, the DLS recommendation was to reduce the fiscal 27 general fund authorization to $7.5 million to align funding with the statutory requirement. The agency disagreed and first House rejected.
Mr. Chairman, for the Maryland State Library Agency, move to concur.
Second.
On page 23 in the white packet, Morgan State University, the DLS recommendation is to approve RGO bonds. The agency concurs and the Senate rejected for an additional action to extend the termination date to use the funds for the new Student Services Support Building.
Mr. Chairman, for Morgan State University, move to concur.
Second.
Page 25, St. Mary's College of Maryland. DLS recommendation is to approve RGO bonds. The agency concurs and the Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
2 pages up.
On page 26 for University of Maryland, Baltimore, DLS recommended deauthorizing funds for the Institute for Health Computing. The agency concurred and the Senate rejected.
Mr. Chairman, for the University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, for the new Institute for Health Computing, move to concur.
Second.
The second recommendation would add a pre-authorization for fiscal 28 for the institute. The agency concurred, the Senate rejected.
Mr. Chairman, for number 2, move to concur.
Second.
On page 27, the Senate added a technical amendment extending the termination date for a prior authorization.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
On page 29 for University of Maryland College Park, DLS recommended approving all GO bond authorizations and pre-authorizations. The agency concurred that the first house rejected and adopted, added $5 million for the Xfinity Center roof repair.
Mr. Chairman, for item number 1 in University of Maryland College Park campus, move to concur. For the second item, move to modify Senate action, increase funding for this project by $5 million.
Second.
Okay, and I have an additional item for your consideration in the Gold Front package, page 4. And this adds $3 million for funding graduate student housing.
Mr. Chairman, for the University of Maryland College Park campus, on the goldenrod page, move to adopt the graduate housing.
Second.
On page 30 for Bowie State University, the recommendation was to approve all GO authorizations and amendments to prior authorizations. The agency concurred and the Senate adopted, but there are 2 additional items for your consideration in the orange packet. So first up on page 5 is item B, which adds $1 million of GO bonds for boiler, chiller, and cooling unit replacements. And then below that is item C, which adds $500,000 in GO bonds for campus safety and security upgrades.
Mr. Chairman, for Bowie State University, move to reject the DLS and Senate and instead to adopt the goldenrod pages of the boiler chiller replacements and also the campus and safety upgrades.
Second.
Okay, on page 31 for Towson University, the DLS recommendation is to approve all GO bond authorization. The agency concurred and the Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, for Towson University, move to concur.
Second.
Page 32, the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. The recommendation is to provide $500,000 for the new School of Veterinary Medicine and Health Professions. The agency concurs and the Senate rejected. There is a proposal to increase the funds to $1 million.
Mr. Chairman, for the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, move to For the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Mr. Chairman, move to modify Senate action to increase funding for this project by another $500,000.
Second.
Okay, page 33, Coppin State University. The recommendation is to approve RGO bonds. The agency concurs and the Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, for Coppin State University, move to concur.
Second.
On page 34 for University of Baltimore, the Senate added $500,000 for acquiring a property on the Mount Royal Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, for item number 1 on the University of Maryland, University of Baltimore, move to concur.
Second.
On page 35, the Senate also added a related pre-authorization for $7.1 million for the property acquisition.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
On page 36 for Salisbury University, the DLS recommendations was to approve all GO bond authorizations. The agency concurred, and the House and the Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, for Salisbury University, move to concur.
On page 37, for the University of Maryland Global Campus, the Senate adopted an addition of $500,000 in GEO funding for the renovation of the university's administration building.
Mr. Chairman, for the University of Maryland Global Campus, move to modify Senate action to increase funding for this project by an additional $500,000.
Second.
Okay, on page 38 for University of Maryland, Baltimore County, the DLS recommendation is to approve the GO bond authorization and amendment to a prior authorization. Agency concurred and the Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, for the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, move to concur.
On page 39 for University System Maryland office, the recommendation was to approve all the GO bond authorizations, pre-authorizations and deauthorization. The agency concurred and the Senate rejected in favor of adding an action, which is a technical amendment to extend the termination date of a prior authorization.
Mr. Chairman, for the University System Maryland office, move to concur.
Second.
On page 41 of the white packet, in the University of Maryland Medical System, DLS recommended approving all GO bond authorizations. The agency concurred. The Senate adopted, but there's an additional page on page 6 of the golden packet for your consideration, which would add $3 million for the Capital Region Medical Center for a new clinic.
Mr. Chairman, for the University of Maryland Medical System, move to reject DLS and Senate and to adopt the $3 million for the Capital Regional Medical Center Clinic.
Second.
On page 42 for MHEC, the recommendation was to adopt narrative requesting a status report for all projects in the Community College Construction Grant Program with unencumbered and unexpended funds. The agency concurred and the Senate adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
On page 43, the Senate adopted an addition of $3.325 million for the Montgomery College Rockville Theater Arts building renovation.
Mr. Chairman, move to for the Montgomery College Rockville Theater Arts building, move to modify the Senate action to increase funding for this project by $1 million.
Second.
And then moving to page 45 for Baltimore City Community College, the recommendation was to approve all GEO authorizations and pre-authorizations. The agency concurred in part and requested $2.1 million for deferred maintenance. The Senate adopted the DLS recommendation, and there's an additional page for your consideration, page 7 of the golden packet. And this adds $1 million in GEO funding for deferred maintenance.
Mr. Chairman, for the Baltimore City Community College, move to reject DLS and Senate and to adopt the $1 million in deferred maintenance.
Second.
On page 46 of the white packet for the Maryland School for the Deaf, DLS recommendation was to approve all GO bond authorizations and pre-authorizations. Agency concurred, first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
Starting on page 47, this begins the Department of Housing and Community Development. DLS recommended approving all general obligation bond authorizations. The agency concurred. However, the Senate took several actions, and bear with me here, we're going to be bouncing back and forth between the white packet and the yellow packet a bit. The first action the Senate took is on the white packet, pages 47 through 55. The Senate restricted funds within the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative. However, I do have a modification to this in the yellow packet on pages 8 through 13. That would restrict additional funds for additional projects.
Mr. Chairman, for item number 1 for the Department of Housing and Community Development, move to concur.
Second.
And for number 2, for the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative, move to modify Senate action with the additional items located on the additional page packet.
Okay. Next, in the white packet on page 55, the Senate also modified a prior authorization for a project within the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative. That's item 3 on pages 56 and 57.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur with that.
Can you go back to that one, please?
This one, it's item on pages 56 and 57. It's fiscal 2025 funds for the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative. This changes one of the projects in the prior authorized funds.
Which item, Ms. Haskell, which number
Item 3 on pages 56 and 57 of the white packet.
is this? The Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative deauthorization item?
Yes.
Yes, move to concur.
Second. Then,
Page numbers, yeah.
You're doing a great job.
You are.
Thank you.
do I have some more
We're good.
page numbers? Okay. On,
Sorry, we're having a little issue because our page numbers are different. So that's the only reason why. Yeah, we're a little
4
off here.
pages off.
It's okay.
That's why the vice chair is.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he's-
I'll try
he's-
to be really specific with the item numbers.
He's doing it like a rock star over here.
Okay.
So we're gonna be all right. All right, thank you, Emily. Go right ahead.
Item 4 is for the Business Facade Improvement Program. This action that the Senate took adds funds for the program and restricts those added funds for a specific project.
Mr. Chairman, for Department of Housing and Community Development for the Business Facade Improvement Program, move to concur.
Second.
The next item, for the Community Legacy Program, the Senate restricted funds for a specific project. I do have an additional page packet. Don't I? Yes, an additional item on pages 14 and 15 of the yellow packet that would add further specified projects.
We're gonna hold this item for the full committee.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. This is community legacy.
Page 64. Number 5 on page 64.
The next item back in the white packet, item number 6 is the National Capital Strategic Economic Development Fund. The Senate added funds and restricted those funds for a specified project.
Mr. Chairman, for the National Capital Strategic Economic Development Fund, move to concur.
Second.
The next item is item number 7, the Seed Community Development Anchor Institution Fund. The Senate restricted funds for a specified project.
We're also gonna hold this item for the full committee.
For the next item is the Strategic Demolition Fund. The Senate, that's item 8, the Senate restricted funds for specific projects and added language reducing funds for provisional award.
Mr. Chairman, for the Strategic Demolition Fund, move to modify Senate action with the additional page packet.
Sorry, I've got an additional item on pages 17 and 18, you're correct.
Yeah, move to adopt those items on number 17 and 18 for the Strategic Demolition Fund.
Second.
The next item is item 9 in the white packet. This is for the rental housing programs. The Senate reduced funding that was fully replaced with actions taken in the operating budget. However, I also have a modification to this on page 19 of the packet, and this goes along with page 20 of the packet. This would reduce an additional $5 million from rental housing programs and shift that funding instead to the Housing Innovation Fund, which is shown on page 20.
Mr. Chairman, for the rental housing programs under the Department of Housing and Community Development, move to modify Senate action with the item in the additional page packet then adopt item in additional page packet for the Housing Innovation Fund.
Second.
Turning back to the white packet in the Department of Commerce, the DLS recommendation was to approve the GO bond authorization for the department. The agency concurred and the first house adopted. However, there is an additional page in the yellow packet for your consideration. This would restrict a portion of the capital appropriation for the Maryland Arts Capital Grant Program to be used only for a specific project.
Mr. Chairman, move to reject DLS and Senate to adopt item in additional packet, specifically $100,000 for the Clifton House.
Clifton House or the State Arts?
No, Clifton House.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's correct.
Okay, sorry.
Is there a second?
Sorry.
All right, back in the main decision document, UOO, Department of the Environment. It's DLS recommended concurring with the governor's authorization. The agency concurred and the first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
Next is the Maryland Environmental Service. The DLS recommendation was to approve all general obligation bond authorizations and pre-authorizations. The agency concurred. However, the Senate reduced the GO appropriation by $7.9 million and instead intended that funding to be replaced with special funds available through the operating budget.
Mr. Chairman, for Maryland Environmental Services, item number 1, move to concur. For number 2, State Water and Sewer Infrastructure Improvement Fund, move to concur.
Second.
On the next page, we should have the Department of Juvenile Services, code V00. DLS recommended concurring with the general obligation bond authorization and amendments to prior authorizations. The agency concurred and the first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, for Department of Juvenile Services, move to concur.
Second.
The Department of State Police appears on the following page. DLS recommended approving all general obligation bond authorizations and pre-authorizations. The agency concurred and the first house adopted.
Mr. Chairman, for Department of State Police, move to concur.
Second.
On pages 71 through 78 are the governor's miscellaneous grant programs for which DLS had recommendations. The Senate actions are in the tally sheet. I believe your actions in the miscellaneous programs are also in the tally sheet, so you'd want to hold on to these items until we get to the extra pages.
Mr. Chairman, for the miscellaneous grants program, move to hold all governor's miscellaneous projects to consider when tally sheet is presented.
Second.
The Maryland Independent College and University Association starts on page 79 of the white packet. DLS recommended approving all GO bond authorizations. The agency requested for additional $2 million. Senate rejected to provide further funding, which we will get to in a bit.
Mr. Chairman, for the Maryland Independent Colleges and University Association, for item number 1, move to concur.
Second.
Item 2 on pages 79 and 80 extends the termination date for a prior authorized grant to McDaniel College.
Mr. Chairman, for the McDaniel College, move to concur.
Second.
Item 3 on pages 80 and 81 strikes language requiring matching funds and also increases the GO bond authorization by $200,000.
Mr. Chairman, move to concur.
Second.
Excuse me, this is the Johns Hopkins University?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that, excuse me. For the Johns Hopkins University Peabody Institute building renovations under the Maryland Independent Colleges and University Association, move to modify the Senate action to increase funding for this project by $200,000.
Second.
Item 4 for the St. John's College, the language strikes language requiring matching funds and also increases the general obligation bond authorization by $200,000.
Mr. Chairman, for St. John's College, New Arts and Academic Hall, move to modify Senate action to increase funding for this project by $200,000.
Second.
Item 5 on pages 82 and 83 for the Wareham College. The action strikes language requiring matching funds and increases the GEO bond authorization by $200,000.
Mr. Chairman, for the Washington College New Wareham School of Global Business, Economic and Social Impact, move to modify Senate action, increase funding for this project by $200,000.
Second.
For the Maryland Hospital Association, the first recommendation, the DLS recommendation was to approve all general obligation bond authorization and amendments to prior authorizations. The agency concurred but requested an authorization of $20 million. However, the first house took a couple of additional actions. Item 2 extends the termination date of a prior authorization for the Howard County General Hospital Comprehensive Breast Center project.
Mr. Chairman, for the Maryland Hospital Association, for item number 1, move to concur. For item number 2, in the Howard County General Hospital deauthorization Comprehensive Breast Cancer Center, move to concur.
Second.
On the next page, item 3 adds funding for the Frederick Health Hospital project.
Mr. Chairman, for the Frederick Health Hospital birthplace renovation, move to concur.
Second.
On the next page, item 4 increases funding for the Shepherd Pratt Towson campus infrastructure project.
Mr. Chairman, for the Shepherd Pratt Health System Incorporated Towson campus renovation, move to concur.
Second.
On the last page of the white packet is the local jails and detention centers. The Senate took an action. Item 1 would add a grant of $200,000 for the Queen Anne's County Detention Center project.
Mr. Chairman, for the local jails and detention center, Queen Anne's County Detention Center, move to modify Senate action to increase funding for this project by $500,000.
Second.
That should have taken us all the way through the main decision document, as well as the yellow or goldenrod packet.
One moment.
Goldenrod.
There's
Yeah.
several documents
Just give me 1 second.
in addition to
I don't know if we did budget item R14, St. Mary's College of Maryland. Did we go over that?
Is the analyst still here? We did.
We did? Okay, thank you. You can proceed.
Let me, yeah, I have that as a concur action.
This is not good.
That's wrong. Replace it switch? Should I go?
Just give us 1 moment. We're getting new updated documents. I'm going to give the members about 60 seconds to just take a look at this new document. Throw out the lilac document, and we're looking at the, folks, let's try and get through this. So we're going to take about 60 seconds to go through this document, and then we'll recommence with the miscellaneous grants program.
Well, it's just not.
Thank you all for your indulgence. We're going to go ahead and get started again.
All right, so just to summarize, we've gone through the decision document as well as the additional page packet, and we held on actions related to the governor's miscellaneous projects that DLS had recommended because they are represented in one of the 3 tally sheets that you should have in front of you. There should be one that is labeled miscellaneous grant projects, one that is labeled miscellaneous grant pre-authorizations, and one that is labeled legislative bond initiatives funded projects. The miscellaneous grant projects include those included in the governor's bill as introduced, actions that were taken by the Senate, and what the Department of Legislative Services believes the current position of the House to be. So I would recommend that you adopt these together instead of taking action on the specific items from the decision document. Before or after you do that, we can also discuss the pre-authorizations page, which shows projects that the Senate and that the House have added to the capital budget to pre-authorize, all for the fiscal 2028 budget. And legislative bond initiatives, this tally shows actions taken by the Senate and what we believe the House position to be. And those would be for fiscal 27, like the normal miscellaneous grants are as well.
Adopt the miscellaneous grants projects, the miscellaneous grant pre-authorizations for fiscal 28, and also the legislative bond initiative fund projects.
Second.
That's everything that we have prepared.
Mr. Chairman, move to adopt the decisions of the House Appropriations Capital Budget Subcommittee.
Second.
All right, time for the question. The capital budget decisions have been moved and seconded by our gracious Vice Chair and our full committee Vice Chair. And is there any questions from the subcommittee before we vote? All right, does anybody need a roll call vote? All right, all in favor of our subcommittee capital decisions, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and we have moved them to the full committee. All right, thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your attention to all of this information and all your hard work in making sure we had as great of a picture of what the capital needs of our state were. And we'll talk more on the full committee decision vote on Friday, but I just want to offer my sincere gratitude to every member of the subcommittee, of course, our Vice Chair, and I'll give the floor to our Vice Chair at this time.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Capital Budget Subcommittee, the House Appropriations Committee, as was mentioned in the PAYGO decisions, we just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership. It's your first session doing the capital budget for the state of Maryland. It's a multi-billion-dollar investment in our state all across the communities. So we very much appreciate your diligence, your hard work, and the compassion that you have for all the communities across our state. So congratulations, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for everyone that was here, and we are adjourned.
Good job. Got it.